my side, yes.
Very good. Okay. Welcome all who has joined, and welcome our dear host. Okay, sorry, just everybody is checking whether you joined us. So I would like to introduce our host, and that's Michael Kusters. He is a enterprise transformation coach, and he's helping all kinds of organizations with their transformations. And after the journey through different roles and different frameworks, today Michael is going to introduce a new, a different structure for us, how to be successful. So the topic for today is building a successful company with a top structure. So Michael, take away.
Yes, thank you. So since we would be having an interactive session working on a Miro board, I have already shared the link in the Zoom chat. It is a password link. I would encourage all of you to join me because I'm not going to do so much talking. We are going to explore a bit together. I'm going to give some introductory words. As you see in the agenda, the top structure has a lot to offer. And what I like to say is it's a kind of structureless structure. I'm not telling you anything about how you need to do things. I will not be telling you this is the one correct way. What I would like to invite you to is a way of thinking about how we approach the topic of software development, software engineering in organizations, regardless of size, and some common patterns that help us structure our own thinking in a way that we can arrive at more effective organizations. Because a lot of times what we see is that we are so focused on this one correct way of doing things that we might lose track of what is it that we actually want to achieve. Top structure is focused mostly on patterns and principles, but I would like to start this session by giving you a short overview on what is the top structure as a model. What are entities? Why are relationships so important? And we will be doing some exercises together on this to explore. And I would actually invite you to also do some talking and not just work on the Miro, because the conversation is what matters. There's more to explore. I would just give you some pointers of what you can look for, because I do have some extra resources to share with you. And then we will have a quick retrospective on our session. Okay, so please everybody join me on the Miro if you haven't done so already. I see 4 people. I'm sure that it's possible to get a few more. I'm sharing my screen, right?
Just a second, I think there is some kind of a mix-up with the halls, with the tracks.
Exactly.
Yes, so if you could just hold a second. I will just, I'm sorry, Vaida, we will figure this one out in a moment.
So let's wait a bit.
Yes. I thought, why are there so few people? And then
they get sent to Martin's session.
Martin.
I was also there. I was following the link and I ended up with who were in the other person's session.
I guess I got the wrong information somehow. We mixed everything up. Please give me a moment. We will figure it out with the rest of the team how to fix this problem. I will send you a new link to a different Zoom. So just for you to be on the right track. In one moment. This is an unfortunate. Okay. I'm sorry for this. I have shared the address to the other track, to Telesofta's track for you, where you can join and start the talk.
So we should all move to the other, or how
Yes.
do we do
So
okay.
we just go back to the agenda and go to Telesofta's track. I'm sorry about this. Some mix-up happened.
Okay, now we've lost everybody. And I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. It appears that we have to fix the agenda, not anything else.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we will just steal time from the end towards the end from the breaks. Maybe delay the last keynote speech a little bit to make sure that we allow for people to join this.
I'm unsure who still comes because people were really confused.
Yes, well, hopefully we can fix it fast. Okay, so apparently the agenda has been fixed. But we just need to now invite people. Oh, this is unfortunate. Okay, we'll do it differently. We will just share this link with everyone. Do some illegal things now. I see some people returning, so hopefully Yes, the agenda is there already. We have 9 people already back here. Hopefully people will refresh and join. Would you like to start or give another couple of minutes for people to get in?
At least people who would like to participate in the session, because it's a workshop, should join us on the Miro when we have enough people on the Miro and get started.
How many would you like to have on Miro?
Preferably everybody who's in the room, but it's everybody's own choice.
So just in case, I'm publishing the link again for the Miro so that people can join.
Mm.
I will go myself to Miro. I think we have 2 people on Miro. Everybody who have just joined us, please use the link in the chat to join Miro board, because this is going to be a much more hands-on talk than previous ones.
Good. As I mentioned, this one is actually a workshop where we will explore together. So being in the Miro will help you participate better, and I'm not sure whether you need to do something in order to allow everybody to speak, but I would like to have some more interaction here, so that you will also speak, because the value, I believe, is more in the conversation than in me speaking.
Okay, I'll participate. Could anybody from participants try and unmute themselves? It appears that mute is not enforced at the moment. Can someone?
Just say hello.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, it works. Thank you very much. Okay, so as mentioned, please feel free to participate with your mics on, and please visit the Miro board. Link in the chat.
Okay, so since we had a fragmented audience before, let's see based on who's still around. Let me just go back to the agenda. So the top structure, what is it? It's what I like to call a structureless structure. I'm not telling you to do things in a specific way, but giving you some patterns and mental models that will help you figure out what you can do to organize your own software development more effectively and with higher probabilities of success. I'm not going to compete with Scrum or any other framework. I'm just going to take a different look at things. And the top structure has quite a bit. We will explore together. First, I will introduce a little bit what is it, and then we will have two interactive sessions where I would just provide some context and then we would collaborate. I'll close this session by giving you some more links that you can explore and having a short retrospective. As I already mentioned, this one is highly interactive, so I count on your contribution with the exercises that I have created. So let's start by taking a look at the top structure. I have created this model, and this one is also where the term comes from: technology, organization, and product. When you look at Scrum, what you have is, you have, of course, a Scrum Master who represents the organization of the team, the product owner who is responsible for and accountable for the value of the product and prioritizing the product work that the teams do, discovering what the value is that we create. But who does everything and how do we create a solution? This one is, of course, in Scrum, the development team. So we have those three pillars: technology, organization, and product. They are hinted in Scrum, but they exist in every organization that somehow creates software products. And one thing that I usually see in organizations is that we, even in a kind of Scrum context, we quickly form silos. The Scrum Master is responsible for the meetings, the appointments, and even sometimes impediment removal, even though the Scrum Guide nowadays doesn't even say that the Scrum Master should remove impediments, but that the Scrum Master supports the team in getting impediments removed. So those kind of things, they should not be siloed. This model is considered a circle. Everything is done by people in an organizational context, but those things cannot be separated. What I like to say is everybody is operating at a certain point, and the further away I get from where I am, okay, maybe I need to take the straight line, the less I have to do with this thing. So this one is not that the white lines are boundaries. We say we have a different silo and we hand over there. No, it is that depending on where I am closer or further away from the things going on around me. But a healthy organization, we need to take care of all the aspects of this top structure, and it should be integrated. And I need to think beyond my own position. I need to think of how is everything playing together, because we're talking about an organizational system. So it's about the interactions of the individual actors more than about what the individual actors do. And beyond the three core domains of technology, organization, and product, how do we, for example, create a good product? Well, we must design it. For the design, we must understand what is the intent behind things, what is it we would like to achieve for our customers, and how would we want to realize it. What I see in many larger organizations is that even between product and technology, design is a separate handoff. So product management comes with a kind of a feature request. It gets handed to design team who create a design, which gets then handed over to the developers for building. And usually what we see with this one is very complex solutions with very poor usability. And this is just one example of why when we have those white lines, we should think about how do we interact in order to arrive at a better solution, rather than this is a boundary that we somehow need to organize and another silo that we should form. And ideally, this is why the colors, when you see the color scheme is chosen with the blend of colors, that design is where product and technology come together, or architecture is where organization and technology come together. You're probably familiar with Conway's law, which basically states that organizations tend to produce technical solutions that represent the organizational structure. And that is what architecture is concerned with. Do we even have the right teams? There's a lot of talk about team topologies, component teams, stream-aligned teams, and platform teams, those kind of things. How do we decide what are the right teams for us to succeed with the products that we are building? Well, that depends a lot on what are we trying to build. And so we need to have this constant interplay between the domains. And so when you look at those different domains that we have, you always need to ask yourself, do we adequately take care of this domain? Do we make sure that the points covered in this specific domain are adequately covered? Do we have the knowledge? Do we have the skill sets to do those things? And where do we put those people? Are they in a separate silo? Are they in an ivory tower? Are they part of the teams? Are they part of our system, or do they observe our system from the outside? The best structures that we can have in organizations is where, of course, you would have people who are deeply experts in whatever domain they are addressing, but they look beyond what am I doing, how does it integrate, and what can we do together in order to get better. And for example, architecture should not be a separation between our organization and our technology, but our architecture should be deeply intermixed with our technology and should have constant interaction in order to create better organizational systems. And likewise, depending on the organizational context we operate in, should be able to facilitate the best kind of technology that we are able to have. I don't even want to go over all of the domains. Just look at this model and ask yourselves, how do we interact across the different domains in our organization? And do we see this one as interrelated, or do we see it as a kind of a handover process? And handovers tend to have problems, but we'll get into that with our exercise when we're talking about relationships. And that's where things get interesting. So I would like to move on to the next topic. Of course, if you have questions, you can always interrupt me for questions. So otherwise, let me move on. A core aspect of the top structure is that we always have the kind of entities in our organization. The individual is an entity, a team is kind of an entity at a higher level of abstraction. If we have a product organization, a team of teams realizing a product could also be considered an entity. And other things that we see in many cases is the federation. Sometimes you see communities of practice, or in a Spotify model, sometimes you're using guilds or so, that are bringing together different aspects of the work across team boundaries. One of the common federations that I see is design, actually, because you need a consistent design and not each team having their own. So you would have a collaboration from design experts from the different team to come up with what they consider the optimal design, and feeding this information back into and from their teams in order to come up with a consistent solution. The classic organization works more on hierarchy, that to the outside of whatever the entity is representing, and it could be, for example, testers or development or operations, there is one person, like, for example, the operations manager, who is a single kind of contact where all the information flows in and out. And from an outside perspective, what this person says goes for everybody. So when you talk about an entity, it is where are the boundaries of our communication and interaction. And that's why from a top structure perspective, what's so important is how does information flow to and from the different entities, and how do those entities interact? And so with this...
The recording has stopped.
Recording has stopped? So given this context, I would like to have an exercise with you. So the individual is if it's only one person. Team is if you interact with anyone from the team. Team of teams, it's when you have bigger entities. Federation is you have multiple teams federating. Or hierarchy is really, like I say, that when you have one person who controls the information flow and decision flow of an entire group. So with this one, I would like to go back, and this is where I would like you to join me on the Miro board. Help me, why can I not bring, this one is the Zoom, bring everyone to me.
It worked.
Have a short exercise for a few minutes, and this one is about having a discussion. There is no right or wrong answer here. This one is you can pick the different types of entities and say which ones do you see most often for example, technology, and just drag and drop them. But the key thing here is not that you drag and drop them, that you have a conversation of why do you see those things happening and what do you observe. So given that, I would like you to just look at what constructs do you have and what do you see in your organizational context as being done. How do you organize typically those things? Laura, would you like to comment?
Yes, I'm thinking, first I thought that maybe we see more of these federations in terms of technology. And I don't know where, for example, communities of practice go in here. If we have some, whether they are a federation or
communities are the federation pattern typically.
Mm-hmm.
Because communities are not centralized and you have usually representatives from each team rather than the whole team engaged. It's actually possible that you could have more than one because you're probably working in different organizations. So it's interesting that I see product as a group. That's not consistent with the Scrum model, is it?
That's the problem.
And how does it work for you?
Where the instances where we've seen more than one product owner on the product, not well.
Mm.
There is a reason why there should be only one.
So what would you think is better, to have an individual or a kind of a hierarchy with product?
Definitely an individual. In terms of, as if we're looking at Agile, limited by Agile, definitely there should be one person.
Yes, in a Scrum context, that is what we would see. In a SAFe context, usually you would have more than one product owner. And then we come into the really kind of hard question. Should we federate it or should we create a hierarchy? SAFe, for example, tends to push people into a kind of a hierarchical thinking. And suddenly we get other problems because we get more communications handovers. That is where I can only say I have my own experiences. What I see works very well is when the product manager facilitates a community of product owners, but when the product manager becomes a hierarchical layer on top of the product owners lose their identity. Because what am I still doing if I'm not making product-related decisions? What's my job? And those are the kind of questions that the top structure, first thing, we can use those kinds of models to understand what is going on, what are we doing, and then asking questions. How does it work for us? What would be other patterns that we could use and how would they work for us? Which problems would we have with a different pattern and which problems would we avoid with the different patterns? And then we can see what would be the best solution that we could use from there. Okay, I see quality being a team here. Is quality really a team?
I've put a team because, well, we have something like a community of practice for team for QA.
Mm.
And but it's pretty small, so I wasn't sure about the federation part.
Yeah, the federation is when you would have representatives from each team. If we see, and that is the reality in many organizations, that quality is still a separate team, then it would be this pattern. I'm not saying this is wrong to do, but as soon as we see that, yeah, quality is a separate team, we can ask ourselves the question, okay, so the other teams around them need to interact with them. So how are the relationships between the QA team and the other teams? Are they healthy? Are they functional? Are they proactive? Are they reactive? Do we see us versus them behaviors, or do we see collaborations towards better product with higher quality? So the model just helps us to understand where are we and where would we like to be. I'm a huge fan of federations because they bring multiple teams together without any we are better than you kind of thing. But too much federations and too many people in too big federations tend to create this kind of everybody is involved in everything and we are only talking but not doing work anymore. So even when we have a federation, we should be asking ourselves, is this the most effective way of working? And sometimes it isn't. Okay, so we were only talking about the entities, and as I already hinted, the system is not the sum of its entities, but the product of the relationships between the entities. So what I see, and this one I've taken from chemistry, you might be familiar with the terms if you've studied chemistry. Cohesion, adhesion, covalence, and bridges, they are all chemical terms, and they are quite important to understand. So cohesion is when you have multiple entities of a lower level of abstraction, so it could be either an individual or a team or even a team of teams. They are cohesive if, when looked at from the outside, they appear to be one entity. So example, it should not make much of a difference whether you're talking to me or to Laura if we are on the same team, because we should have the same kind of information and we should be able to act as one entity, even though we are two individuals, but from the outside, we are part of one cohesive team under ideal circumstances. Adhesion is usually when we have people who do different things, or in other ways, entities with different purpose, who have to collaborate in order to produce a coherent outcome. And issue with adhesion is that it almost always results in a kind of a process chain. It's not I can do everything by myself, but I do my part of work and then hand over to my colleague who can do the other part of the work. So you can see already adhesion happens when we have specialists in teams or when we have specialist teams. And if we have, for example, a component architecture with component teams, we get a lot of adhesion if we're trying to get any customer value out of the door. So the more adhesion we see in our organization, the more complex our organization becomes. Covalence is the third construct, and that is when people or entities share another entity. Usually I say a resource entity. So for example, we share the same testing environment, or we even share the same test data. We use the same build pipeline. Those kind of things could all be a covalence between entities. What is the advantage of covalence? Is that we do not multiply the cost of resources with the cost of entities. What is the disadvantage? Shared resources need to be coordinated. So if I want to use a test environment and you want to use it, we need to somehow make sure that I'm not messing up your process, and you need to make sure you're not messing up mine. So what is it worth to us to have this kind of covalence? If we dissolve the covalence, it might cost us more, and it might create fragmentation in the organization, but the advantage is that we create more autonomy among entities. Bridges, when you have multiple entities sharing another entity as a kind of, okay, there's a mistake on this one, but it doesn't even matter. So the key thing here is, when you have a bridge, then you carry information from A to B. What is the typical kind of bridge that you would see in bad organizations is the product owner. The product owner talks with customers or users, notes down the information, and talks with developers to give them the information. So that one would make the product owner an information bridge between users and developers. And what typically happens when you have a bridge communication?
Miscommunication.
Miscommunication, information loss, and another very dangerous thing that can happen very easily.
When people turn a little bit the requirements according to their own point of view. Well, interpretation.
That's also a kind of miscommunication, but correct. Imagine that we would have a kind of a less construct and a product owner for 5 people, for 5 teams, trying to match all the requirements across the teams. Well, what would happen?
Bad product.
Bad
product.
Yeah, okay, we have it in the chat. Indre posted a bottleneck. You create bottlenecks because the bridge eventually always becomes overburdened. And so we are losing time because people are waiting for information, and the individual who becomes a bridge is overburdened. So we're losing efficiency and we're putting stress on people. And both of those things are really undesirable in order to have a high performance organization. You're not helping anybody by doing this. So one thing is, when you spot bridge communication, you should always ask, what is happening at this bridge? Miscommunication, delay, overburden, and interpretation, all those kind of things are almost guaranteed to happen, and they have a price. And that price could outweigh the value that the bridged entity is bringing to our organization. With that one, Nora, how much time do we have left?
That's exactly something we're thinking, because there's a keynote starting at 3:50, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So very little time.
Okay, so unfortunately, I would like to have an exercise with you to see what you can think about, but maybe you would like to think about it on your own time so that we save some time here. And that is that each of those bonding types, they have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for our organization. You might want to think for yourself, what can you figure out? And what can you do with those things? There is no right or wrong here because all of those types of entity relationships exist in the real world. So it might be, are we aware of what the strengths and weaknesses are, and are we using them adequately? So save time, skip the exercise.
Yeah, so we have 10 minutes till the keynote.
You might also want to have a short break. So the top structure has some actions. The elements I did introduce to you, they are the domains, the entities, and the bonds we did talk about. There are further concepts that we don't have time to explore. Organizational energy flow is critical. Dealing with waste and compounding of effects, because compounding is the question of short-term versus long-term trade-offs and the price that we might have in the long term that could be totally unbearable, but it's not even visible in the short term. And I have compiled for you the link here. Is accessible, a pattern library where you will find some of the core patterns. I hope the link is clickable for you. Otherwise, I can
Yes, it is.
Post it here in the chat again, where you can find some more information. The top structure, I'm still creating this one. So if you would like to join in the conversation with me on this topic, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. And if you would like to have further workshops to see how you can use the top structure to find optimization potential for your organization, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn to me and join the conversation with me. And so that's it from my side. And with that one, I would still like to take a few minutes before we leave to the session to have a short retrospective with you. I'll take the feedback, I'll think on it. And if I host this kind of session again in the future, I would like to have as much feedback as possible. So thank you for your inputs. I'm giving you 3 minutes. And other than that, if you have any questions or would like to say anything, I'm open to questions.
The microphones are unmuted, so anyone can just ask. Question, mirror link. Yes, it's in the chat, but I will repeat it once more. Here we go. Mirror link sent again.
This Miro will be available for 1 week. After that, I would take it down. But if you would like a PDF snapshot, just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Okay. So from, unfortunately, we gave Michael very little time to get his message through, but has anybody got questions? Vova chat has info. Yes, I'm just gonna check that. Oh, okay, not a question. Anybody got questions? For me, this relationship slide triggered some thoughts about who are bridges in our organization and how we can substitute them with some other, relationship, let's call it that, because we have quite a few bridges.
Mm. Yes, and that is usually the first thing that I like to work on, because bridges, like I say, they also suffer in the organization. Those are individuals, or even sometimes small teams of individuals. Regardless of how much work they do, it's never enough.
Yeah. Okay, I
just had a reminder about those bridges issues. So yeah, very good. One more time reminder that there is basically a lot of stuff going on in those bridges, and they are bottlenecks, and they create a lot of issues and miscommunication. And also it very depends on people who are those bridges, because some people spot that thing and try to go away from that bridging part, but others actually are taking as much as possible to feel this power, yeah, controlling information, controlling everything around. Sorry, I didn't turn on video. That was me.
Yes. Yeah, and when you see this pattern that you have communication bridge who would like to be in control of the information flow, that is, I have another model which I call near communication: needs, expectations, assumptions, and reasons. You have to figure out what is going on with those people, what needs do they have, what do they expect, what assumptions are in their head, and which reasons are they giving you. And you need to drill beyond those things, because usually what you will find at the very core is some kind of fear. Okay, let's wrap up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael.